Inspirational business owner exposes racial profiling, leading to bank's unexpected 18 Metlers loss. Andre Johnson sat in the cramped office of the small-town bank. The walls felt as if they were closing in on him, their faded yellow paint reminiscent of everything he had fought through to build his barbecue joint. He could smell smoke wafting from the kitchen back home, where his daughter Mia was likely perfecting her own blend of spices. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, an opportunity to secure a loan to expand his thriving catering business. But as the bank officer dismissed him with a sneer, it hit hard. Denial. Telegraphed by their thinly veiled words of doubt, it was the familiar sting of prejudice that struck at the core of his aspirations. He thought of the countless late nights, the sweat burnt in the heat of the grill, the endless customer smiles that made it all worthwhile. Yet here he was, a successful entrepreneur being ignored because of the color of his skin. Desperation surged within him, mingling with a bitter indignation. It was not just his dream on the line, it was Mia's future, and he feared facing her with this failure. Would she understand why her father, after climbing so high, was suddenly on the brink of losing everything? Andre left the bank feeling like a ghost, invisible among the passing faces. The air chilled around him, curling the edges of his hope. What had gone wrong? Was his tireless work not enough? The feeling was suffocating, and with each step, his mind roamed through worries as if in a twisted maze, spinning in endless circles of doubt. He questioned everything he believed in, the values he instilled in Mia, the legacy he hoped to pass down. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Determined to fight back, he sought advice from Mr. Harris, his retired banker mentor. Together they walked through the dense forest of financial literacy, growing evidence of discrimination on his fingertips. Each finding felt like a stone in his gut, a reminder of everything that was wrong with the system. The righteous anger rolled over him, consuming him as he spoke of rights and justice. Yet every moment's clarity was coupled with an unease that gripped tight in his chest. How far was he willing to go? Mia's laughter echoed in his mind, a sweet sound that both comforted and haunted him. He poured all he could into his investigation, but at night, sleep eluded him. The stakes felt higher by the minute. With each line he documented, fear danced in his veins. What if he was too late? What if he lost it all before he could claim the truth? Then came an unexpected breakthrough. A local journalist became intrigued, turning his struggle into a spotlight. Community members rallied behind him, hostility toward that bank rising like a tidal wave. Yet with it came an unshakable doubt. Was it enough? He had to face the bankers soon to lay bare the wrong before them. As he prepared his statements with sweaty palms, he felt the tension tightening around him like a vice. Every breath echoed the uncertainty, the anxiety that filled the room in invisible waves. He was ready to reveal everything, but that moment hung before him, trembling on a precipice. Would they listen? And just then, the doors swung open behind him, a silhouette standing in stark contrast to the uncertain future ahead. Andre turned, his heart racing at what awaited him next. The culmination of his fight lay just out of reach, shattering his resolve, as everything he had worked for faced its greatest challenge yet. The figure who stepped into the office was familiar yet unexpected. It was Michelle, the journalist whose recent headlines had stirred up a storm around the bank's dubious practices. She approached with purpose, her presence an infusion of adrenaline laced with immense pressure. Her eyes locked onto Andre's, conveying a silent assurance that said, "You don't have to do this alone." "Are you ready?" she asked, the weight of her question pressing against him. Her tone wasn't just about the meeting. It felt like an invitation to take a stand, to transform his indignation into undeniable advocacy. I think so, he stammered. But deep down, doubt tainted his resolve. Despite the meticulous preparation, the prospect of confrontation sent waves of anxiety crashing through him. What if they dismissed him again? What if the anger that boiled inside him faded, leaving him vulnerable once more? Remember why you're doing this, Michelle reminded, her gaze steady and grounding. It's bigger than you. You're setting a precedent. Andre nodded, but the alien sensation of external scrutiny was nerve-wracking. It felt as if the very walls of the bank loomed larger, eager witnesses to the drama that was about to unfold. He inhaled deeply, mind racing through scenarios, each one darker than the last. What if the board retaliated? What if speaking out cost him his business, his livelihood? But then he thought of Mia, caught between her father's battles and her dreams of being a world-class pitmaster. Her determination was unwavering, a reflection of his own. This reality expanded his heart, compelling him to stand tall, even amidst fear. He straightened, a flicker of resolve igniting within him. The unyielding hallway seemed to stretch infinitely before him as they made their way to the boardroom. Each footfall resonated, echoing the stakes of the meeting ahead. Andre could practically feel the weight of his hopes, dreams, and the voices of others crushed under insidious bias. The world outside was changing. He needed to force the bank to acknowledge that change came at a price. As they entered the boardroom, the tension was palpable. The suit-clad bankers looked up, their expressions a mix of skepticism and arrogance. Andre took his place at the head of the table. "Thank you for allowing us this opportunity," he began, steadying his voice. Yet the moment brushed against a haunting familiarity, his past experiences clawing at him as nerves tickled his spine. He launched into his prepared statements, fueled by facts he had dug out in sleepless nights, an array of statistics and personal accounts woven with his own. As he spoke, his voice transformed from a tremor to a powerful roar, the words tumbling out with growing conviction. But just as momentum surged forward, hands shuffled papers, and skepticism thickened the air, a banker leaned forward, interrupting. "And why should we believe you? The numbers can be manipulated." That question hung like a thunderstorm, dampening the fire within him. Andre paused, searching for his footing in a land of shifting sands and disbelief. In that heartbreaking moment, doubt clawed back. What if he had been naive to think they would listen? What if the system was unbreakable, yet in the chaos of his thoughts he found clarity? "Because I have nothing to lose anymore. I'm not only here for myself. I fight for those who never found their voice," Andre challenged, his conviction sharpening like a blade. The tension shifted again, charged with poignancy as he realized he was in control of this narrative. Just as the statement reached its crescendo, a raucous noise erupted from outside, a gathering voice of dissent outside, an energy palpable even through the glass walls. He graced the other bankers with a fierce gaze. "Are you ready to face reality?" As he prepared for their response, a tremendous weight of uncertainty settled heavy on his shoulders. Was he strong enough to endure this? Would he truly emerge from this fight not just for himself, but for others like him? As he began to feel the pressure rising within the chamber, the unexpected tap of a finger caught his attention. Michelle, watching him with unerring belief, provided the anchor he desperately needed. But the next second revealed a new dilemma. What if the support that felt so solid was as fragile as the confidence he wrestled with? The time had come to face not only his opponents, but also the very essence of who he was destined to become. The silence that followed his defiant challenge echoed in Andre's ears, intertwining with the drumming of his heart. The boardroom air thickened, an oppressive fabric woven with tension and disbelief. He could sense the bankers recoiling slightly, not from fear but from the unexpected confrontation of their own authority. But Andre was not done yet. Fueled by the tumult swirling within him, he pressed on. "In you lies the power to do better," he declared, each word carefully constructed yet instinctively unleashed. "Your decisions not only steer this bank but ripple through lives unseen. Are we to pretend that the narrative of financial trust exists when systemic injustice thrives in the dark? His voice captured their attention, morphing his anxiety into a compelling call for integrity. The board members shifted in their seats, murmurs rising as their confident facades began to fracture. One banker exchanged glances with his colleague, his expression shifting from skepticism to momentary introspection. Andre seized this flicker of doubt, understanding how rare such a moment could be. "Think of the impact," he urged, a newfound urgency coloring his tone. "The trust you sacrifice today for short-term gains endangers generations. I can stand here as a statistic, as an example of those crushed beneath your policies, but I refuse to play the victim any longer." His resolve hardened. "I stand as a force for change." With every syllable, a deeper understanding took root in him, a realization that only through vulnerability could he hope to expose the undeniable truth. Personal stakes surged beyond himself, intertwining with the fates of others who lived in silence. As if sharing the weight of those unspoken stories, he felt emboldened, a voice echoing the fears and anger of countless others. Yet doubt still whispered in the recesses of his mind. What if his fervent pleas only ignited a defensive retaliation? What if this moment of strength was merely a facade, crumbling beneath the scrutiny of the very men who shaped the narrative? Their eyes were stone-set, some glancing at the papers scattered across the table, their dismissiveness once again looming large. Suddenly, the chaotic clamor outside breached into the space, an awareness of public scrutiny crashing against the polished veneer of the boardroom. The presence of discontent filtered through the glass, a harsh reminder of the world beyond. Andre found himself recalling Mia's face, her fierce determination making him momentarily invincible. "Believe me when I say, I am not alone in this battle," he asserted, drawing strength from not just himself but the many who faced a similar plight. "Your decisions can either fortify the walls that isolate us or tear them down. Which legacy do you choose?" As the murmurs filled the room, a realization dawned on him. He had ignited a spark, but would it catch flame? He watched their faces, the flickers of doubt and irritation entwined with glimpses of curiosity. The board members were suddenly grappling not just with facts but with their own ethics. They might question the weight of his words, but they were undeniably listening. Just then, a senior executive with an unreadable expression lifted his head. "You speak with conviction, Andre," he began, the tone suggesting an unexpected shift in the discourse. "But with that comes a responsibility. Are you prepared for the repercussions of such a stance?" The question hung heavily, an invitation that bore the heft of a challenge, already calling Andre to grapple with his readiness to face what lay ahead. Was he merely exposing himself to threats, or was this transformative moment paving the way for a new narrative? As adrenaline coursed through him, Andre recognized that every action had consequences. Now, standing on the precipice of change, he felt a sense of both liberation and fear. The moment had come, not just to face the board, but to embrace the uncertain future he had set in motion. His voice rang with newfound determination as he steadied himself. "Then let us explore what that responsibility means for all of us." With minds turning and newfound potential engaging, he sensed the weight of what was yet to come, the question remaining unspoken but ever present. Would he reclaim agency in this space, or was he merely igniting a flame that could consume him whole? As the reality of his choices began to unfold, an uncharted path laden with unpredictability, Andre's heart pounded with both fear and exhilaration. The fight had only begun, and with it, his evolution. The room was electric, the charged silence amplifying the subtle shifts in the atmosphere. Andre could feel every heartbeat resonate against the boardroom walls, the echo of his own pounding heart, urging him to navigate this precarious moment with clarity. A challenge had been issued, and this was a pivot point, not just for himself but for an entire system. "I will not hide behind the comfort of silence," he continued, his determination cutting through the air like a knife. The senior executive's gaze was steady, but the corners of his mouth twitched, perhaps in reluctant acknowledgement of Andre's bravery. "If being honest means facing potential backlash, then I welcome it. But what I fear more than any repercussion is complicity in further injustice. The intensity of his voice surprised even himself, as if a dormant power had awakened. This truth ignited a fire within him not seen before. Proving his point now mattered more than simply confronting the bankers. It was about transforming the landscape he had lived in and maneuvered through for years. Yet, inwardly, doubts waged a tug-of-war against his conviction. What repercussions awaited him? Would this stand lead to professional backlash? Andre's mind spun with potential scenarios, the specter of career suicide looming large. Nevertheless, he was tired of living under the weight of caution. The fragility of his current position felt less daunting compared to the idea of enduring silent despair, a life shackled by fear and compliance. There was a pause, an almost palpable hesitation hanging before him. The board members, those arbiters of financial fates, were slowly internalizing the ramifications of their choices. "Your story resonates, Andre." Someone finally spoke, a junior member whose face Andre recognized from recent meetings. "It's not just about the numbers, is it? It's about lives, futures, and trust, the very pillars that sustain us." Andre felt a flicker of hope igniting, yet his instincts urged caution. Were they genuinely being transformed by this exchange? Or was it a mere simulation of empathy, a public relations facade meant to quiet the discontent swirling in the streets? The layers of manipulation in corporate discourse were dizzying, leaving him to discern authenticity from decorum. "What tangible changes are you proposing?" The senior executive's voice cut through the murmur. His expression was grave, but Andre sensed no hostility. Rather, it was a challenge embedded in intrigue. "Let us significantly reassess our policies, ensure transparency in all decisions, and establish a direct line for accountability among our staff," Andre responded, his words spilling forth as if the very foundation of his convictions was being laid bare. "This is not simply about optics, it's about building rooted trust with our clients. Trust that has been fractured." As he articulated his vision, Andre felt a shift within himself, a blossoming confidence bolstered by what he had always believed but rarely expressed. Each proposed idea carried a weight of its own, not mere words thrown against a wall to see what stuck, but an invitation to rethink their collective purpose. Yet, an unsettling thought crept in. What if his vision met insurmountable resistance? He could feel unseen barriers rising, brick by brick, threatening to encase him within a prison of geriatric corporate culture. "I'll ask you directly then." The senior executive leaned forward, his intention sharpening. "Are you willing to become the face of this change? To advocate for these alterations and stand before those who oppose them?" Andre's breath caught in his throat. This was his moment, the very opportunity he yearned for, yet a daunting weight pressed against his shoulders. He understood that this was no longer merely theoretical. His identity, aspirations, and integrity hinged on the answer he gave. "Yes." The word rolled out, accompanied by a finality he hadn't anticipated. Each letter vibrated with purpose. As Andre embraced this newfound path, the door ahead loomed larger. He felt a surge of responsibility, one that transcended his previous fears. Yet, the exhilaration brushed with uncertainty, as he confronted not just the challenge of transforming the bank, but of facing the potential fallout. The atmosphere shuddered with unchained possibilities, and the boardroom began to resemble less of a fortress and more of a stage, a platform for action. But even as the board members shifted in their seats, the question lingered in his mind. Would he forge ahead fully, or retreat into the familiar comfort of self-preservation? Andre's heart thudded, knowing the tides of change were washing over him, but he could not predict where the currents would lead. In that moment, facing a life-defining crossroads, Andre felt the weight of his choices intensifying. Would the world of finance be ready for the wave of transformation that he was about to unleash? The boardroom began to hum with activity as Andre's words sunk in, creating a palpable tension among his colleagues. The stakes had risen, and now they were more than spectators. They were participants in his vision. An unexpected look of respect flickered across the faces of higher-ups, but with respect came scrutiny. Would his suggestions trigger a genuine evolution within the bank, or provoke deep-rooted resistance? With the challenge etched clearly in his mind, Andre prepared to engage fully with the daunting task ahead. He stepped away from the podium and into the main area, making a conscious effort to connect with each board member's gaze. This wasn't just a presentation, it was a call to action. Each face represented a decision-maker who could either support or undermine his vision. "Let's discuss our first actionable step," he asserted, his voice steady. "The immediate reassessment of our lending practices and internal policies must come from a foundation of respect and honesty. We need to ensure no one faces bias when pursuing opportunities at this institution, and that starts here." A senior executive raised a brow, skepticism lining his features. "And how do you propose we create this accountability without jeopardizing our financial metrics? We're all aware of the implications of poor lending practices." Andre clenched his jaw momentarily, feeling the heat of defensiveness rise. Yet he understood that this was part of the game. Rather than retreating, he embraced the discourse, positioning himself not just as a maverick, but as a combatant for rational change. What we've conventionally considered good metrics have relied heavily on flawed standards. We must redesign our success measures to include metrics of fairness, sustainability, and long-term relationships. Hushed whispers traveled among board members as his argument resonated. Was it possible that Andre was making them rethink their fundamental principles? The undercurrent of intrigue surged with each point he made. Yet lurking behind his confidence was a tight knot of anxiety. His mind flashed with images of betrayal from any who might seek to sabotage him. "Your passion is commendable, Andre," came the voice of another board member, one no stranger to fierce critiques. "But passion doesn't pay the bills. Can we truly afford to change at this scale while ensuring profitability?" Here lay an opportunity, a moment of potential but also peril. Instead of flinching, he leaned forward, allowing his conviction to flood through his words. "What I propose isn't a decline in our profitability, but a realignment of our priorities. Looking beyond traditional gains to build a brand defined by transparency will attract a loyalty we've never seen before. The market is shifting. Those who cling to outdated norms will be left behind." As Andre spoke, he realized he was not only defending his stance, he was forging a new identity as a leader, not merely within the confines of the bank, but in a broader context of corporate responsibility. The vision he articulated encapsulated a drive that transcended profit margins. He was advocating for societal equity. Their eyes narrowed thoughtfully with his proposal, weighing figures and moral implications, but he could sense their reluctance to fully embrace a future fraught with uncertainty. He understood their hesitation didn't stem from disinterest. They were afraid of the unknown. Andre took a deep breath, channeling the gravity of the moment. A failure to act will surely lead to repercussions, ethically, if not financially. We're at a crossroads, and it is within our power to pioneer a transformative approach in the banking sector. Silence blanketed the room as his words lingered. The weight of his declaration hovered like a storm cloud, and Andre felt a mix of exhilaration and dread echoing within him. He had planted a seed, but he couldn't yet gauge its potential for growth. Then, without warning, one board member broke the silence. "If we commit to this, it may lead to backlash, not just from investors but from our existing clients who might view this as risky. Are you equipped to handle that fallout?" The question pierced him. Acceptance and defense were key, but he wasn't merely advocating for change. He was likely stepping into crosshairs. Andre met their anxious expressions with unyielding determination, answering, "I won't shy away from the truth. I'll confront any adversary head-on for the sake of a future we can be proud of." Yet, as the conversation evolved, the reality that confronted him loomed even larger. The pending criticisms, the risk of alienating longtime clients, all compounded doubt about this daring leap. In that moment, a deeper realization washed over him. He was not just challenging the status quo. He was challenging himself to become something he had never envisioned, a force of change. Would he have the strength to navigate the storm ahead, with all its potential for personal and professional growth, or were the risks too insurmountable to bear? As the board members mulled over his propositions, Andre's breath caught in anticipation. Would they see this moment as the launch pad for true change, or as a slippery slope into chaos? The turbulence ahead was palpable, yet it was this very uncertainty that would define him as a leader. The crossroads lay stark before him, illuminated by the flickering light of possibility. Would he embark on this tumultuous path or retreat to the safety of tradition? The moment teetered precariously, waiting for his next bold move. As the meeting adjourned, Andre felt the weight of 1,000 eyes lingering on him, scrutiny wrapped around him like a cloak. The palpable tension had shifted, but the prospect of inevitable confrontation loomed larger than ever. He could feel the aftershocks of his bold move reverberating through the polished walls of the boardroom. Would they dismiss him entirely, or engage the dialogue he sought? Days ahead flashed before him, a battleground where he must defend every ounce of his conviction. Back at his desk, a sanctum cluttered with reports and ambitions, Andre struggled to rein in his racing thoughts. The echoes of doubt whispered incessantly as he organized ideas, monitoring reactions from stakeholders, ensuring he was prepared for what might follow. What if they rallied against him? The historical undercurrents of banking were riddled with reluctance to change, and yet, he yearned to be the one who sparked a shift. But at what cost? He sat quietly for a moment, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. He flipped through the financial analyses on his screen, metrics that now felt restrictive and outdated in the wake of his new philosophical direction. It was time to dig deeper than mere profit figures. He had to uncover how this journey could ultimately spur growth beyond the ledger. Andre envisioned a straightforward presentation, mapping out the transformation he championed. Revised lending practices intertwined with ethical considerations. His priority was clarity, balancing the bank's financial stability with a commitment to social responsibility. But more than that, he needed to unveil the bank's oppressive history before those who occupied the top echelons of authority, those he needed to follow his lead. He spent the next hours crafting potential rebuttals to counter the skepticism that would inevitably emerge. What if they perceived his suggestions as impractical? He anchored his thoughts by considering potential data points, increased customer loyalty from diverse demographics, metrics that could reshape their entire marketing approach. In his mind, a mental map began to form, one pulsating with the promise of innovation. "Dare to disrupt," he repeated in silence, allowing this motto to fuel him. Yet, lurking in the shadows of his optimism, were the whispers of fear. Fear that the financial world would swallow him whole if he failed to navigate these treacherous waters effectively. That evening, as he departed the bank, tension unfurled stubbornly in his chest. His path back to the parking garage was laced with uncertainty. He would need allies, people who could see the bank not merely as a machine for profit, but as a vessel capable of driving societal change. The weight of the board's potential backlash cast a long shadow over him. Groups like the risk management team and marketing department would be crucial to galvanizing support for his cause. He envisioned reaching out to internal leadership influencers, those courageous enough to advocate alongside him. Despite doubt gnawing at his resolve, the image of a reformed institution steered by principles of equity ignited his determination. A social media post sparked his attention on the commute home, a viral article depicting the failures of companies that neglected their ethics in favor of profits. The outcry reminded Andre of the ground shifting beneath the banking industry's feet. It was too profound a moment to ignore. The time for him to lead was now, and before long, Andre felt something break away within him. He wasn't just fighting for a bank's future anymore. He was fighting for a new legacy. When he reached home, he penned an email to his trusted colleague, Michelle, a seasoned risk analyst known for her unwavering commitment to ethical standards. He invited her for a brainstorming session the following day. As he hit send, a surge of clarity burgeoned within him. But just as the prospect of transforming the bank buoyed his spirits, an echo of the board's concerns was relentless in his mind. What lay ahead could not only reshape his professional journey, but could redefine him personally. The commitment he was making felt monumental, but he had to question, was he prepared to lose everything in the process? As he settled into bed, Andre battled sleep. thoughts racing about how the board might react when he challenged them again. The next morning could either anchor his vision or plunge him into chaos. And at that moment, he felt teetering delicately between courage and fear, a precarious balance begging for resolution. It was becoming clear. Embracing the uncertainty ahead would mark the beginning of his profound metamorphosis, but he could no longer ignore the question that gnawed at him. Could he truly lead the way into this brave new world? Would he emerge as the changemaker he aspired to be, or would he succumb to the anchors of hesitation? With the dawn of the next day lurking just outside his window, the time had come for Andre to embrace the unfolding battle, one that demanded every ounce of his courage. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains as Andre stirred from a fitful sleep, each moment before him charged with possibility and dread. The board meeting loomed like a storm cloud on his mental horizon, ready to unleash the torrents of criticism he had prepared for. Today was not merely another set of PowerPoint slides. It was a defining moment, a chance to carve out a new identity amidst the tumult of an industry averse to change. As he stood in front of the mirror, he concentrated on his reflection, searching for the resolve he needed. This was no longer solely about financial metrics. It was about aligning the bank's mission with ethical integrity. Thoughts of potential allies sparked within him, fueling his belief that his presentation could do more than challenge the status quo. Andre's aim was to ignite a movement, a collective awakening towards true responsibility in banking. Over a hastily made breakfast, he mentally rehearsed his key points. Risk management through moral clarity, he muttered, feeling the term resonate like a war cry rather than a mere phrase. Each word was a stepping stone toward clarity, both for himself and for the boardroom full of suits who had yet to grasp the gravity of his message. He arrived at the bank with keen determination piercing through his lingering fears. The atmosphere was starkly efficient as he navigated to the boardroom. Employees dashed back and forth, their motions sharp and focused. Andre couldn't help but think of the contrast between them and the vision he had. To him, the bank's culture felt stifled, locked in cycles of repetitive strategies that ignored the evolving societal landscape outside their towering glass walls. Taking a deep breath, he entered the boardroom, where silence enveloped the space, disrupted only by the muted sounds of the city beyond. Familiar faces turned to him, curiosity mingling with skepticism among his colleagues. He could feel their expectations weighing on him, a mixture of tension and opportunity. As Andre began his presentation, his voice steadied, confidence slowly unfurling like a flower reclaiming sunlight after a long winter. This wasn't merely a bid for support. It was a truth he needed to unveil. He presented the data, interweaving heart-wrenching stories of lending practices that marginalized vulnerable communities. The metrics shifted from cold numbers to human experience, a narrative that pivoted from risk aversion to the very real consequences of misaligned values in their processes. Facial expressions around the room ebbed and flowed as he spoke. Discomfort slipped into the air, and the silent ripples of realization began to take form. Andre noticed one board member, Tom, an ally he had hoped would be his linchpin, nodding thoughtfully. Was this the breakthrough, or simply the calm before the storm? Once he concluded his presentation, a reflective silence filled the space. It was eagerly punctuated by murmurs of concern. "We can't possibly risk our profits with morality," one director declared, attempts to stifle a brush of fear evident on her face. Andre's heart pounded in response. This was it, the confrontation he had anticipated, but he held his ground. His inner voice urged him to stand firm against the waves of opposition. "What if," he interjected, "morality and profit weren't diametrically opposed? What if embracing ethics could enhance our clientele and market share?" The argument resonated within him deeper than he had expected, fueled by passion that reverberated through his bones. As discussions flared up around him, Andre's heart raced with a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. He was standing at the verge of transformation, not just for the bank, but for himself. His career a chrysalis, slowly becoming a butterfly. He knew he was carving a path few had dared to tread before, but with each rise of tension came the looming specter of resistance. Could he truly shift their thinking? Andre's gaze flitted between the reactions in the room, some skeptical, others intrigued, and a few outright hostile. As emotions swelled, it felt as if he was on the brink of a breakthrough or a disaster. What lay ahead was uncertain, and in those fleeting seconds he understood the stakes could not be higher. This was the moment that would define him. His commitment tested against an ingrained system. With the board's reactions uncertain, Andre took a moment to steel himself. He thought of Michelle, waiting in the wings, her support a quiet reminder that he wasn't alone. He was left grappling with a newfound conviction. Sometimes the loudest battles were waged not on the surface, but in the hearts and minds of those who resisted change. And each second that ticked by brought him closer to discovering what he was truly capable of achieving, or failing. The confrontation had begun. The outcome was still unwritten. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Andre braced himself for the forthcoming debate. Would he emerge a leader or a martyr in this relentless pursuit for change? The answer was yet to reveal itself. Perched precariously on the edge of the unknown, the atmosphere in the boardroom thickened, almost tangible, as Andre felt the weight of scrutiny pressing down on him like a physical barrier. Tom's tentative nod had given him hope, but it quickly flickered under the harsh fluorescent lights. He was met with crossed arms and narrowed eyes from colleagues that felt threatened by the very changes he was advocating for. It was no longer merely a debate, but a skirmish of ideologies where allegiances were being formed and tested. Are you really suggesting we risk our credibility for some perceived moral obligation? Another director spat, her voice cutting through the rising murmurs. The question was less about seeking clarity, and more a challenge to Andre's intentions. Beneath the facade of professionalism, he sensed a primal fear of change, of losing their tightly held positions in an industry built on traditional values. Andre paused, taking a breath, feeling the tension vibrate within him like a taut string ready to snap. He had anticipated this but hadn't fully prepared for the audacity of their objections. He reminded himself why he was here. This bank, like so many in the country, had an obligation, not just to profit margins but to its community. Not risking our credibility, he countered, deliberately steadying his tone. I'm asking us to consider what credibility even means. Are we credible if we ignore the harm we cause? He noticed Tom shift, a slight movement that signaled interest rather than indifference. Andre interpreted it as an opportunity to deepen his message, wrestling with the very human instinct to retreat when the stakes climbed. He pushed through, speaking to the room filled with resistance. I'm not talking about philanthropy for the sake of appearances. I'm proposing we rethink our strategies to ensure they reflect the values we claim to uphold. What we do ripples into real lives facing systemic challenges that we cannot simply overlook. The silence swirled around him, thick and alive. He was aware of the delicate balance he was attempting to maintain, advocating for change while also navigating the needs and fears that clung to the board like a second skin. A flicker of hope ignited within him again as he recognized an undeniable truth. Change was always born from discomfort. A voice broke through the silence again, this time softer yet laced with incredulity. And what about our investors? They demand returns. Banking is a business, Andre. Each word was a reminder of the harsh reality he dared to defy. Was he prepared to let that tension turn into animosity? He leaned in, the urgency of his conviction tempering his resolve. Our investors want stability, yes, but they also seek innovation. The market is shifting, consumer behavior is changing, and businesses that are blind to those changes will ultimately falter. We have a chance here to lead the charge, to become the institution that stands not only for profit but also ethics in finance. What we risk losing is far more than money. It's our legacy. A ripple of reaction washed over the board. He could see them grappling with the implications, calculating risks not just in numbers, but in potential futures. It was a progress he desperately needed. As voices began to rise, a cacophony of differing opinions filled the room. Andre felt exhilaration coursing through him, spurred on by the shifting dynamics. He began to realize that this was his crucible, a test not only of his ideas, but of his ability to influence and galvanize the very people who seemed opposed to his vision. Somewhere in the heated discussions, he glimpsed the chance to engage, to transform indifference into a shared mission. But then, from the back, he caught sight of someone he hadn't expected. A line of unyielding resolve etched on Vivian's face, a director known for her hardline views. "I think he's onto something," she declared unexpectedly, capturing everyone's attention with her unwavering voice. Her comment was like a boulder dropping into a still pond, rippling through the board members. Hopes rose and fell around him as the room's energy shifted. Andre felt his pulse accelerate. The winds of change might be blowing in his favor, but disaster was still closer than it appeared. Would his message break through the decades of tradition, or would he lose himself in a tidal wave of corporate conservatism? As the meeting spiraled into chaotic discussions and passionate arguments, Andre prepared for the inevitable backlash. He had to think quickly and strategically. Suddenly, he realized he was not just fighting for the bank. He was rallying for his vision, purpose, and career. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome was tantalizingly out of reach. He just needed to throw the right stone into the pond, one that would resonate like a call to action among the discord. Could he consolidate this growing momentum before it fizzled out altogether? With clarity coalescing into strategy, he focused on Vivian, recognizing her potential as an ally. But could he trust her? What would it cost him to engage her support? The embrace of an unexpected partnership loomed like an uncharted territory, and Andre's instincts urged him to leap. Determined, he set his sights on Vivian, ready to navigate a treacherous partnership, hoping it would steer the board toward a better understanding, a clearer path forward. Would this pragmatic alliance unlock the doors to transformative change? Or was it merely a stopgap measure that would threaten his ideals altogether? The next moment was pivotal, and every second that passed intensified the uncertainty surrounding him. Andre steeled himself, drawing a deep breath as the voices around him crescendoed into a chaotic clamor. It was as if he was standing at the center of a storm, and he needed to find a way to harness the energy swirling around. Vivian's unexpected endorsement had shifted the board's dynamic, but with it came questions he hadn't anticipated. The catalyst for change was before him, but the path wasn't laid out. It was fraught with obstacles that only he could navigate. "Vivian," Andre called out, pushing aside the tumult. "If we can unite on this, I believe we can reshape how this bank approaches its role in the community and beyond. Your voice carries weight. What would it take for you to back a comprehensive initiative?" The courage it took to pose the question blared within him, driving home the seriousness of the moment. He had to dig deeper, engaging not only Vivian, but also the lingering doubts of the skeptics. "I'm not convinced we can do this without risking everything," she countered, crossing her arms again, an old habit that seemed to convey her readiness to retreat. "What's your plan for the fallout? Because it will come." Andre's pulse quickened. This was the moment for full transparency, for an unvarnished breakdown of what was at stake. "The fallout is precisely why we need to be proactive, Vivian. Ignoring community issues only deepens our dissenters' resolve against us. We either adapt or we watch our relevance vanish while newer, more innovative institutions rise in our place." Nudging forward, he sensed the board's energy shift once more, curiosity replacing some of the doubts. Could he turn that flicker of interest into confidence? He scanned the room, observing the skeptical glances traded among his colleagues. The vision he laid out wasn't just rooted in idealism. It demanded a strategic financial framework that would withstand scrutiny. He envisioned partnerships with local organizations, cultivating trust, and reiterated that potential investors would respond well to a mission-driven institution, ultimately fostering growth. "Let me present a detailed plan next week. I'll outline how our ethical approach can translate to measurable outcomes and provide examples of banks that have already triumphed, bridging profitability and responsibility," Andre proposed, feeling the tension ease slightly as his proposal took shape. "The board has a fiduciary duty to its shareholders," another voice interjected hesitantly, but the urgency was dimming, opening cracks of opportunity. "I get that," Andre replied, the fire in him stoking once more. "But if we disregard the changes around us, we constrict our future potential." I envision a bank that stands the test of time, not just surviving but thriving on the foundation of our community's trust. With Vivian nodding slowly, Andre seized the moment, steering the conversation toward tangible examples, highlighting the battle lines of a transforming market. Each reference, each statistic, was like a stepping stone forward. Yet doubt lurked. Was this confident facade merely a mask for his own uncertainties? The discussions enveloped him in excitement and fear, teetering on the verge of realization that he was not merely presenting a case for change, but branding his professional existence in a way that demanded authenticity. As conversations began to shift toward potential collaborations, Andre's resolve solidified. He would draft not just a proposal, but a manifesto of values, something that could resonate deeply within the banking community. His heart raced with growing ambition and a flicker of apprehension. While others grappled with the risks, he began to ponder greater implications. What would this mean for his career? Would they view him as a visionary, or a fool chasing a fleeting ideal? The stakes were high, and he felt the ground beneath him both thrilling and terrifying. As the meeting drew to a close, Andre looked at Vivian once more, ever the enigma across the table. "Can I count on your support?" he asked, locking eyes with her. "Together, we could create a formidable alliance that rallies the board around responsibility and profitability." Her reply lingered just a moment as every question he had wrestled with throughout the meeting came crashing to the surface. Would she guide him through this quagmire of skepticism, or would he find himself battling against not just corporate inertia, but a legacy that seemed unchangeable? Just then, the evening's lingering tension felt palpable, a loaded ambivalence clutching his thoughts. Was this the turning point he desperately sought, or merely a temporary reprieve from an unyielding tide? The unpredictable terrain of corporate ambition lay ahead, and with it the prospect of transformation, challenging him to explore uncharted depths in both his ideals and his identity. Unsure of what the coming days would hold but emboldened by the potential of this emerging partnership, Andre left the room with a clear but daunting goal: to galvanize Vivian, to unite the fractious board into a cohesive front. The moment to face the uncertain unknown lay ahead, demanding not only his expertise but the courage to confront his deepest convictions. What would be the price of change, and was he deep down ready to pay it? The boardroom was abuzz with discussions in the days that followed. Andre could feel the shift. The murmurs of doubt and resistance had morphed into tentative conversations about collaboration and solution-oriented strategies. The transformation he envisioned was no longer just a distant hope. It was taking root. Each day brought him closer to realizing the expansive future he had fought so hard to initiate, one that intertwined profit with purpose. On the day of the follow-up meeting, Andre stood at the cusp of what felt like a new beginning. His presentation would outline a strategic roadmap, one that championed ethical practices while also addressing shareholder concerns. The initial trepidation faded as he prepared. Empowered by a sense of solidarity with Vivian and the support of a shifting board, he felt the clarity of his mission sharpen. As he entered the boardroom, the usual tension had dissipated. Chairs were rearranged, coffee cups filled, and the atmosphere hummed with anticipation. He was greeted with nods of acknowledgement, an unmistakable shift from the scrutinizing gazes of the past. "Thank you all for coming together," Andre began, his voice steady. He gestured toward the screen behind him where graphs and data points illuminated his vision for change. "Today, we have the opportunity to pioneer a new model, one that not only bolsters profitability but also ensures our legacy of integrity." The room fell silent, each member leaning in, their expressions a mix of curiosity and hopeful skepticism. He detailed the integrations he proposed: enhanced community engagement programs that not only reviewed lending practices, but ensured direct involvement from those most affected by their decisions. As he spoke, Andre wielded data with the confidence of someone who had toiled relentlessly to unearth it. "Imagine a bank," he continued, "that can articulate to its clients a story of partnership, trust, and an unwavering commitment to fairness. We can be leaders, not just in finances, but in shaping a new narrative about banking's role within our communities." Each phrase served as a clarion call, and with every passing moment he demonstrated a firm command of the narrative he sought to change. Gradually, the conversation began to morph. Questions were posed not from a place of contention but inquiry. What metrics can we use to ensure accountability? One member asked, searching for tangible measures. Another queried, how will we address potential backlash from clients who resist these changes? With prepared responses, Andre engaged thoughtfully. He welcomed the inquiries as opportunities to solidify his stance. Our metrics will measure not only financial success but community impact. As for pushback, we will communicate transparently, fortifying client relationships through engagement and education. As the meeting progressed, he sensed palpable shifts among the board members. They were not merely following his lead. They were invested. The conversation flowed more freely, liberated from the constraints of old paradigms. Each question became collaborative, and he could feel the collective energy sparking to life, an acknowledgement that the winds of change were indeed blowing through their midst. After several back and forths, Vivian finally interjected, her voice clear and firm. I believe we should move forward with Andre's proposal. We have an opportunity not only to modernize, but to redefine our institution's legacy. It's time for this transformation. A sense of relief washed over Andre as her endorsement fortified the collective resolve in the room. Heads nodded in agreement, conversations sparked into action plans, and that was it. He had anchored them to a vision of courage and progress. He left the meeting feeling lighter, a gust of invigorating air filling him with hope. This was not merely a professional win but personal growth, an evolution from the fears that had once caged him. He had stepped into the unknown and emerged not just unscathed, but empowered. Over the next few weeks, Andre worked tirelessly alongside a coalition of supporters within the bank as they began rolling out new initiatives. Community outreach programs flourished, and he marveled at the positive response from clients and stakeholders alike. The feedback was overwhelmingly affirming. Trust was gradually being restored, and he could feel the seeds of change sprouting all around him. Reflecting on these developments, Andre felt profound satisfaction. He had not only managed to advocate for a shift, but was now an integral part of a legacy built on accountability and integrity. It was more than an organizational achievement. It was personal redemption, a full-circle moment that transformed his professional identity. Days turned into months, and the perception of the bank began to shift within the community. Clients praised new lending practices, and competitors took note of the progressive direction they were heading. One sunny afternoon, as Andre celebrated the one-year anniversary of the program launch at his barbecue joint with family and friends, Mia approached. With proud eyes, she hugged her father. "You did it, Dad. You showed them what being a good bank really means." His heart swelled. "Together we did it, Mia." And in that moment, Andre realized he was no longer just a lone voice fighting against a stark system. He had forged pathways of understanding, validated himself as a leader, and championed positive change alongside like-minded individuals. That was his ultimate achievement, a commitment not just to his dreams but a testament to resilience and tenacity, and a fulfilled promise to the future generations looking up to him. His journey from confronting prejudice to reclaiming power and instigating meaningful change didn't just evolve the bank, it redefined him. Andre Johnson had emerged not just as a business owner, but as a beacon of integrity and a force of transformation, confident in his role as a catalyst for a brighter, more equitable future. Now, more than ever, he understood. True success lay not in accolades, but in the values we uphold and the difference we make, one step at a time. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.